Kia ora, it's Ruth here in my backyard in Christchurch, and I thought it was about time to do an update on my seeds that I was doing with the experiment. So it's been nearly a month, just a few days shy, and they've been going really interestingly. It's been really interesting actually having them as an experiment and just following them through and seeing how they go. So if I start, I will start with my straight soil. So at first, these have grown really well, but it's really interesting because they've gone really fast and really tall, and they're not that strong. They're looking a little bit windblown at the moment because for the last couple of days I've been leaving them outside to get hardened off, which is a really important part especially when you're growing them inside or in a greenhouse. If you go straight from the greenhouse or inside to outside, they get a bit of a fright, especially with overnight temperatures. So during the day I've been leaving them outside, and then to a little bit of the night and then taking them in. I need to do a few overnights before I actually plant them. So they're going quite well. The kale has probably done the least in this one, broccolini the best, but they're long but leggy, not very strong. If we have a look in the garden soils, this is the bought soil, they're a lot shorter, you can tell really easily, but what's really interesting is they just look a lot stronger. They've got their secondary leaves that just look, a lot better than the other ones. So I found that really interesting, that while the garden soil, they came up really fast and they've grown really tall, these seedlings look a lot stronger. So once they get transplanted, I'll be interested to see how they go. And then that's the same as well for the soil and drainage. These have ended up doing the worst. So at the start I was like, far out, these have come up within a couple of days, I think like 4 days, and the first ones were out. But with being in the wind, some of them, their stems have actually completely shriveled and the plants died because they don't have enough strength to hold themselves up. So I found that really interesting. And then seed raising mix, while I said at the start it was the worst one, took the longest for them to sprout, they've been growing at a pretty good speed, and while they are quite large, larger than the garden soil, they are strong as well. So if I'd gone on my first after a week, I would have said that the soil and drainage was definitely the winner because it got them out the fastest. But now that it's been about a month and they're nearly ready to put in the soil, I would go with either the garden soil or the seed raising mix, because while it's slower, I think sometimes slow and steady wins the race. So I'll take you soon to show the ones that were done in the garden beds. I did those as kind of a bit of a control, just because I wanted to see, the focus was on the different soils, but you know, just how things are going outside. But I just wanted to say, here's some other seeds that I planted about a week after, so they've been about 3 weeks. These are my marigolds. I'm about to plant another lot, and I'm going to try plant heaps of these out in the garden because I know that marigolds are really good for companion planting, and they're super easy to grow from seeds, and I was lucky enough to get some seeds from my neighbours. So these will go in the ground very soon. I've also got my nasturtiums. I found that in the South Island they're actually a lot harder to grow than the North Island, just because they actually properly die out over winter, where ones from when I was living in Auckland, they kind of live all year round. So I've planted some, and they're going to go in the garden soon. But what's not going to go in the garden soon is my zucchinis. I've got 2 different types. I've got Gold Rush and Black Beauty, and these have been growing on for a while, but I need to repot these. When I was living in the North Island, it was always Labour weekend, was kind of the rule of thumb for tomatoes and zucchinis to be warm enough to be planted outside. Down here in Christchurch it's definitely show weekend, which is middle of November. These ones, I can see there's some roots coming out the bottom, so they need to go in a deeper, bigger pot. And the reason for show weekend is we're still getting really cold nights and frosts, and things like these zucchinis and the tomatoes, they just don't like it, they don't last. And from what I found from last year, I mean, it's really easy. I'm just like, stuff it, I'm just going to plant them Labour weekend. When I planted them in Labour weekend, the ones that I planted after show weekend, in the end they produce fruit at the same time and were the same size. So yeah, slow and steady wins the race. So let me take you over to where the other gardens are with the control ones. So here in the garden you can see the beetroot and the broccolini and the kale. So outside is definitely a bit cooler. The broccolini, it likes a cooler growing temperature anyway, so they've done quite well and they're definitely ready to be thinned and moved around the garden. Kale, only a few ended up coming up, and the beetroot kind of the same, only a few. And if I take you over here, these guys have kind of been similar. The kale has done a lot better actually, it's got some really good secondary and third leaves on it. Broccolini, pretty big, and the beetroot, there's only 1, 2 that ended up coming up. So luckily I didn't rely on these fully, I've planted some more seeds as well. Thank you for watching. Now that spring is properly here and it's definitely heading into summer, there's going to be a lot more jobs to do around the garden, which is really exciting. Make sure you subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I'll catch you next time. Ka kite.